Our first guest is John Smythe. John is CEO of Engage for Change and a long-time employee engagement expert. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Your presentation went down very well yesterday. But despite that, engagement is still a bit of a dirty word. I mean, amongst the C-suite, they still don't kind of get it, do they, really?
They don't. We've been preaching to the converted, we being all of us, this community of communicators. But the moment you step into the C-suite, you get a lot of blank looks. So the journey has started, and it's going to take years to really bring this idea into life.
And that's even despite things like Engage for Success. I mean, we had David Cameron launching that particular one. You know, it's still
Engage for Success is a fantastic UK government initiative to bring alive the whole idea of engagement, and it's been produced by David McLeod and Anita Clark, and it's been terrific. It's a wonderful piece of work. If you haven't seen it, go online and have a look. But again, we've been preaching to the converted, and we've got to get into the C-suite. Otherwise, we're going to be pushing at a half-closed door.
Okay, so you're here amongst a bunch of communicators. What are the lessons for communicators in terms of how should they be changing to drive engagement, do you think?
Okay, I think the key message for communicators is that up until recently perhaps, the job of the communicator has been to report on decisions made by elites, by the few, to the many who are waiting for those messages, and doing that very engagingly and successfully. Now the communicator's role is still to do that, but also it is to set the stage whereby decisions can be contributed to by workers everywhere.
So, I mean, your argument is not just total anarchy or democracy even, but you say you should push decision-making down to the level where people are most qualified to do it.
Yeah, I think for me anyway, the key to employee engagement is sharing the decision-making. And that does not mean willy-nilly everybody and everything. It means decision-makers making a really good judgment about who will add value to a new strategy, an operational savings plan, or whatever, and saying to themselves, who actually knows more about this than we do up here in the C-suite, let's design an experiential activity where we can get the tanker drivers, we can get the pilots, we can get the tax revenue officers together because they know their people, and we will end up with a better strategy more quickly.
Now, tell me a bit about these sort of participative things that you do. Safari strategy. Strategy Safari. What is that?
Strategy Safari is based on the metaphor of going on safari, and the idea is that with a partly cooked strategy created by an executive team, let's say it's 30% on the way, you then take it out and in very well organised but very large open space activities, you invite people to contribute and challenge in small, very well organised groups. So the invitation is there to completely challenge what's been put down and to add great ideas. And the point about safaris is that in one day, or less even, you can involve up to, say, 2,500 people face-to-face, but it might just be 200 or 700 or so. And they will feel at the end of that 24 hours that they have understood what the strategy is based on. They will have contributed a mass of ideas, and before they go, they will see their executive team saying yes to this one and no to that one. So it's strategy in a day.
That's the difficult bit, isn't it? Because I can understand, you can explain, you get them to do the emotional journey and all that stuff. But, you've got 2,000 people, you have loads of ideas. Give me an example of an organisation where this sort of bottom-up stuff has actually worked.
An example. There are so many examples. I was referring to that 2,500 to a Microsoft event some time ago. We've worked recently.
I mean, these days it's all about cost savings rather than about growing and that sort of stuff.
Well, I think that is one. You see, we're at the point where this recession is coming to an end, and the organisation that's stuck in a mindset of cost savings is never going to radically increment its bottom line unless it makes a big and brave decision to do stuff differently. And there's no better way than actually getting large numbers of people to participate in thinking do if they got hold of your assets? What would the enemy do if they came in now and could run the show differently? And so you need to these things allow people to step out of their own shoes, step out of their own culture, step out of the we can't do it because zone into we can do it because we have got the invitation.
Okay, now you spoke yesterday that leaders should be guides, not gods. What do you mean by that?
Guides, not gods. I mean, leaders have been brought up over the last 50, 60 years with the expectation that they will have the answers, and they've been trained in that way, they've been developed in that way, they've been looked up to, hierarchical management, all that sort of stuff.
Tablets of stone.
And now, with the Y generation are asking why, and the leaders need to be the enablers of other people's thinking, thus the guide. Now, just one thing I would add to that. Good engagement requires strong leadership about the few things that they really need to be not negotiable about. So This isn't about giving away the whole piece. It's about top leadership taking fewer big decisions and sharing more of them.
Yeah, because you talk about the peach. The stone in the peach is the bit that's non-negotiable. Bite into that, you'll hurt your teeth. You can have that for free, actually, if you want to put that to your next book.
Fantastic. We use the peach analogy with an executive team to say, okay, what are the givens, the non-negotiables, the things that are set that we're not going to invite contribution and challenge below this group? And if you sit with a group, with a C-suite for a day or whatever it is, a few hours, that stone will shrink because somebody will say, oh, that group over there, the engineers know better about this. Yeah. We should involve the salespeople. And so the stone will shrink and shrink and shrink, and the confidence will grow and grow and grow.
And the peach gets bigger.
And the
more
peach
fruit.
Gets bigger. Yeah, fruity.
More fruit. Okay, you've got a new book coming out. When's it coming out and what's it about? What's it called?
It's called Velvet Revolution at Work, The Rise of Employee Engagement, The Fall of Command and Control. And it's coming out in July. And there are basically 3 new bits to it, I suppose, which the previous one didn't have, or only alluded to.
For all those of you who read the Chief Engagement Officer and know it backwards, there is something new in the new book. What are the 3 things?
The 3 things are that there's an absolute how-to guide on participative disruptive strategy.
Yeah.
So you can pick up the book and you can take it to your C-suite and say, we're going to do the next strategy, the next change process, in this disruptive, participative fashion.
Yeah.
Here's the how-to guide. So there's a cooking instruction. The second new thing, I think, is that we have looked at the competencies that a good leader deploys when she or he engages their people. So we validated that across the UK only, I'm afraid, through a big polling organisation. We've done it 3 times now, and we've got pretty validated figures about the competencies, the skills, the attitudes, and things like generosity, things like expecting other people, your people, to know better than you do. So there's a lot of attitude stuff in there, as well as a lot of skill stuff. So that's new-ish, I think, if there's anything new in the world, that is. And the third one is some observations for communicators, which is to go from the reporting mode only to the enabling the disruption. So being beside the leader, who very often wouldn't know how to run a participative strategy session. So there's a fantastic opportunity for communicators to bring their creative skills to bear and create these wonderful experiences for their leaders, which produce the great ideas.
So we still have a role.
The communicators have a bigger role than ever before. And it's very exciting.
Well, that's very encouraging. Thank you very much for coming onto the show. Well, from the other guests that came and presented here at Eurocom, I'd like to hand over to one of the presenters, but at the moment she's going to be an interviewer, and that's Sylvia Cambier. Sylvia Cambier, welcome.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, everybody. I am delighted to be joined today by one of the Eurocom speakers, Aurelie Valtat, who is the president of IABC Belgium. You might know Aurelie from her great success when she was working for Eurocontrol, and she tweeted during the ash cloud crisis, and that's an incredible story that we have told on Simply Communicate. So Aurelie now works for a major European institution. Welcome, Aurelie.
Thanks, Sylvia.
First of all, how have you been enjoying Eurocom?
It was fantastic. I really, there are two main takeaways from me of Eurocom. One is the family spirit, the fact that people really feel connected to the same IABC family. And the second one, which I think is really one of the perks of IABC's Eurocom, is that speakers mingle with the participants, and that creates a unique atmosphere.
So now you are a successful social media pioneer, and I'm afraid I'm one of your groupies. So I wanted to ask you a question that has been on our minds for a long time, and recently it's becoming more and more crucial because a lot of people are trying to recruit community managers. So what makes a successful community manager?
There are two things which I would single out. The first one is be personal. I think it's really important that we recognize the fact that social media is about people-to-people connections. And if you hide behind an institutional face, it will not work. So put them in the front row, your community managers, give them the possibility to express their own personalities. But, and that's the second part, at the same time, they have to embody the organization's voice. And I think that creates a unique mix for companies to both show the brand and at the same time allow employees to really become the brand ambassadors by being authentic, by being themselves.
So you work in a large European institution. What needs to change culturally in an organization like that for social media to really be successful and engage employees?
I think the real success of social media in big public institutions will start when they recognize how far they can and want to go with it. And I see three levels. You can use it either as a tool, fair enough, you don't expect it to deliver big cultural changes, but you're missing out on the huge opportunity of social media. You can use it as a working method, changing the way you work, adapting your ways of working, which already shows that you've learned something. But, and that's the ultimate objective, you can really use it as a disruptor of your organizational structure, of your thinking patterns, and that's where it's still a long way to go in the institutions.
A long way to go. So disruption, of course, is one of the topics here at Eurocom this year. So 5 years from now, can you tell us what's your vision? Where would you like internal social media to be?
I like to give social media away to everyone. That is one of my dreams. There has to always be a strategic communication functions which will decide for the company which tools are relevant to represent the brand, to share with the customers or the clients. But I think everybody should be able to use social media. The blurring between internal and external communications is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So everybody should be social media savvy in the company, and that will only benefit the company itself.
So if you were to give a piece of advice to our fellow communicators on how to use social media to really trigger change, what would that be?
Start by listening. In any case, don't say social media is not for my company. That doesn't work anymore. Just start by listening, build up progressively your brand on social media, and listen. I mean, it's in the listening. It's all in the listening. They will tell you. If they want more from you in terms of customer service, you will go that direction. And you can add up to that your own brand agenda. But customers will tell you what they want, and you can already address those concerns. And it will only, trigger a more beneficial relationship with them.
Great. Thank you, Aurelie. Disrupt and listen, or listen and then disrupt. And now back to you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Lovely. And if you have any questions for Aurelie or anybody else on the programme today, just use the question function at the bottom of your screen. Lovely. Okay, well, joining me now is Celine Schillinger. Hi, Celine.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Let me get you closer to you here.
Okay.
That's a nice bit about this show. You're Director of Stakeholder Community at Sanofi Pasteur. Now, Celine, you described a fascinating project this morning of how you launched a community for gender balance at Sanofi Pasteur. Why did you launch it, and how did you launch it?
Actually, I came to a point in my career a few years ago, 2 years ago, when I realized that people who got promoted, people who run the company were kind of all the same.
Strangely familiar.
And kind of different.
Possibly male.
Possibly male, actually all male, all scientists, all white, etc. And I was different, obviously. And I thought for a second, no, for a little while, the problem could be me. But then I realized the problem was the system and the organization. And maybe I could do something to make the organization better and give it the possibility to better leverage its full talent pool, not just half of it. You see?
Indeed.
So I've sent an email to the CEO suggesting that gender balance could be a performance driver. And I sent this email, I forwarded this email to 3 people afterwards in the company. And in fact, this email went viral, not through the CEO, obviously, but through the 3 friends of mine. And it triggered an intense conversation around the gender balance. And from then on, I've decided to create a community on our internal social network.
Well, hang on, let me slow you down here. So you send an email to the CEO, which he ignores. But by chance...
CEO, sorry.
Well, he's a busy guy.
Yeah,
but fortunately, on the side, you sent it to 3 other people, and then it went viral from there. So it's unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
Did you feel like Jeanne d'Arc? Did you then feel, oh my God, I've got to pick up the banner and go for this?
It was a striking moment when we said, oh my God, what is it? What have we started? And very quickly afterwards, a dozen of us decided to meet and to discuss what we would do with that. And we decided to actually position ourselves as a positive and contributive think tank. We thought we could actually help the company progress towards equality and modernism by bringing ideas and benchmark, etc.
What do you call it?
We call it WISP.
WISP.
Yes.
See, Sanofi Pasteur is a sp.
And W stands for women with a capital W and a capital M.
Men, it's
women
inclusive.
And men. It's
women
inclusive, yes, absolutely. It's open to men.
And what's the I for?
In.
Oh, in. Ask a stupid question. Okay, so this is a bottom-up initiative in many ways, bottom-up. So has it been effective? Can you really change a culture bottom-up?
Well, I can't say we've changed the world, but we've contributed to significant evolution, I would say.
Right.
At collective level and at individual level too. Collective level is the fact that the company has launched an action plan, and we've made progresses definitely in some areas with women being more visible in the organizations and being appointed to senior roles, etc.
Yeah.
And at individual level, people have felt empowered. Women now feel authorized to speak about the topic. And it's more difficult for men to joke about it.
Okay, but that's significant, isn't it? We think that that's just a small thing, but that is a huge thing. How far down in the organisation? Because I can understand people like yourself. Yeah. It doesn't take a big step for you to feel empowered. But I mean, you walk through corridors and you see that 80% of the admin staff are female.
Yes.
And really are treated little better than the cleaners in many organisations. I'm not talking about in your organisation, but I'm struck wherever I go. It's a shaming thing. Have you actually given a voice to them?
Absolutely. And from the very beginning, it's been a completely inclusive movement, and we've tried to have as many diverse people as possible, women and men, from any country. People speak in their own language, so it's easy for people who don't really master a second language, for example. And we try not to focus on top executive issues, but issues of everybody, like work-life balance, like being visible, mastering social media to have a voice, etc. And we've seen people with very discrete jobs in the organizations becoming more visible and feeling empowered enough to stand up, including admins, of course, and other people. And those people are now grateful for the movement because it gave them the power to stand up and take control over their professional life.
Yeah. Now, okay, people are listening to this. You've been through, it's a lot of hard work to do this. Yes. How long has it been going for?
It's been going on for 2 years now, and we are now close to 2,500
on the network.
In WISP.
What's the gender balance?
It's difficult to have actual figures, but we say that more or less 15 to 20% are men.
Uh-huh.
And we are over 50 countries, so it's not just Western Europe's thing. It's definitely, I mean, it's very, very large, and we've actually networked with other networks outside of the company.
Right. Okay.
So we've expanded outside, and we've actually been rewarded with prizes, awards.
You won awards for WISP?
We won awards for WISP.
Congratulations.
Just 2 days ago, we won the APEC Gold Trophy for Equality.
Okay, that's
given
not to be sniffed at.
by the French Executive Association with the Minister of Women's Rights. So we're very happy about that.
So people out there who want to be an award winner in 2 years from now, what are the key lessons? What can you tell them? What would you do differently? What were the key learnings for you over the past 2 years?
The key learnings to me are that community is a very, very powerful driver for engagement, and when it's facilitated by social media, it is a great power that people have, and very often they don't realize that they feel they're alone, so they don't feel they can have an impact. But by joining forces through social media, they can actually have an impact. So this is the first learning. My second learning is that it does work for business too. And by creating connection with our audiences and our clients, etc., and leveraging the same kind of recipes, inclusion, engagement, etc., we can reach great collective results. Yeah. And my last lesson is that companies should really pay attention to their game changers.
Game changers? Who are they? What's a game changer?
I call them the corporate rebels. And this is an idea that I really enjoy, because I think companies too often try to neutralize the people that speak up or that challenge assumptions, and I think they shouldn't, because this is where the actual change and the value creation comes from. It's from those people who resist the status quo.
We call them the unreasonable people, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true.
And it's so easy to turn them off.
Yes, exactly.
And then people sort of avoid them because they think, they're awkward. They ask the awkward questions and so on. They're the difficult ones.
Yes.
But they're just incredible enthusiasts who are just not engaged, because and you switch that switch and suddenly
absolutely. And it's a great source of value that the companies are currently not using. Yeah. And the whole system is trying to refrain those people from speaking out. HR, communication, whatever. So
particularly communicators. We tend to avoid him or her. They're difficult.
Exactly.
Get them on side.
And my suggestion is that, on the contrary, we should leverage the energy and innovative, disruptive mindset of those people.
So nurture your corporate rebels. Is you've heard it here first, is the key thing, nurturing your corporate roles. Well, Celine, thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you.
Can you stick around, because I'm sure we'll have questions
yes, okay.
on this particular thing. Thank you very much for joining the show.
Thanks.
Well, one of the main sponsors of Eurocom is Yammer, the Enterprise Social Network, and we've got with us today Rav. So let me hand back to Sylvia to quiz Rav on why is it.
Thank you, Mark. Our fourth guest today is Rav Dhaliwal, who's Customer Success Manager at Yammer. So welcome, Rav.
Hi, Sylvia. Thanks.
Let me get started with my first question. It's a difficult time in Europe. Europe is facing disruption and challenges. So these large organizations here in Brussels need to move from silos thinking to agile structures. Can social enterprise networks really help there?
Well, we're actually already seeing it helping here, Sylvia. So here in Brussels, we have the European Commission, and they have been really embracing social tools like Yammer, which they use quite extensively. Recently, for example, the Commission launched a big initiative to improve the digital competence of its staff. This was a terrific event. They had several hundred people attend, including the Vice President. And this was all organised, planned, and
that's
run.
Mark
That's Mark Sefcovic, that's correct. And that was all organised and planned via their internal social network, via Yammer. So they are already cutting across the organisational silo, the organisational boundary. And most importantly, they are self-organising. They're using Yammer to self-organise in a way that makes sense for the work that they have to produce.
So self-organization is what you need. The EU institutions need to bring in expertise from the outside. They cannot operate in a Brussels bubble, particularly in the current climate. So how can social media help?
Well, again, this is very interesting. So most people tend to think of social media as either being internal or external only. And the example the situation that you described requires both. And the policy unit here at in Brussels, the regional policy unit, they deal with over 3,000 European institutions, from mayors' offices, to local governments, and they actually use what we call a secure Yammer external network to do that. So they've extended their internal social media to involve outside expertise securely and quickly in order to serve the people of Europe better.
So adding an external dimension to what
absolutely,
you have.
yeah.
So let me ask you, can social media really give companies a significant cost savings? This is something that we have all been, thinking about, because at the end of the day, it's still IT, and IT is expensive.
It's true, IT can be very expensive, but cloud-based solutions or social solutions like Yammer mean that there's no capital investment for an organisation. So, in fact, those of you watching and listening in today, you can get started with these social tools right now for free without having to buy any equipment or pay anybody any money. And again, we see, this idea as Maroš Šefčovič, as I mentioned before, the Vice President of the Commission, he put it beautifully. He said, look, what cloud computing gives me or my staff is access to the power of a supercomputer whenever I want it. And in the same way that we consume electricity, we don't have to own the power plant. And I think this has found particular traction with social tools, and it's actually been a very key contributor to Yammer's success, is that we have maintained being a cloud application only. It allows us to move very quickly, and it allows our customers to get up and running with basically instant time to value.
You've mentioned the word cloud.
Yes.
So what about security?
So security is central to absolutely everything that we do in Yammer. It has to be. And I think now one of the great advantages of us being part of the larger Microsoft family is it brings us a huge amount of resource dedicated to security. We've never, ever had a security breach in our entire history.
Never?
Never. And we have over 200,000 organizations that are using Yammer, 85% of the Fortune 500. So I think we have a proven track record in this area. I think an important point to remember when you bring up the issue of security is if you're an internal organization and you have a security breach, that's bad. That's possibly loss of money. Somebody may get fired. For a company like us, if we have a security breach, we're out of business the same day.
Right.
So the stakes for us are way, way higher. So as I say, that's why security is absolutely central to everything that we do.
So, thinking about security and thinking about establishing networks that you can then extend offline and externally, can you give me some examples of where Yammer has really helped to meet concrete business goals?
Well, this is actually the best part of my job, is that people tell me stories about how this is actually helping them. So I was recently in South Africa, fortunate enough to be working down there, and a customer of mine down there has a real challenge where they hire a lot of graduates, and it takes them about 6 weeks to get these graduates onboarded and up to speed before they can actually go out and earn revenue for the company. So what they decided to do was very innovative. They decided to invite these graduates to the company's Yammer network once they'd signed their contract, but before they'd started. And what this let them do was actually connect with their managers, with their co-workers, to actually talk to HR, talk to finance. And they were successful in cutting down that onboarding time from 6 weeks to 4 weeks, which when you spread over the cost of how many graduates they hire, very significant business saving for them.
Right, so that's a concrete benefit that they have
Absolutely,
identified. Great, thank you so much for joining us today. Rav, stick around for questions,
Would love
please.
to. Thank you very much, Sylvia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Right, well, I'd now like to introduce the man behind Eurocom 2013, Phil Weiss, Chair of the conference, author of course, the book Hyperthinking. We've been doing a bit of hyperthinking as well, haven't we, at the conference? We've had a fair amount of hyperthinking going on.
Well, absolutely, and I think it's been a great 3 days actually. And
of course, because of the pre-con,
There was a pre-con for the first time, there was the TED-style format for the first time, and we had the IBC Rapido, a Peshakusha kind of format. So we've really been trying different things, and I think it's gone down very well.
Now, What was the theme of the event?
Well, it was disruptive communication for disruptive times, and we picked the theme actually some time ago, and I think it keeps getting more relevant. I mean, you read the news and something unexpected happened. Italian elections take us by surprise. Cyprus comes up. It's just so many unpredictable things keep disrupting our routine, and I think that's what's so exciting about it.
Well, yeah, in fact, we've had a question already from John Rutledge, which is, it was a question for John. Unfortunately, John's had to dash off to catch Eurostar. But the question is the recession over? And, John runs an agency, you run an agency as well. I mean, it's not over, is it? I mean, we're still in a period of extreme change, and it's extremely difficult for communicators, to find budgets to make a difference, don't you think?
Well, I think that the one certainty we can have is that we have no idea what's going to happen next.
No idea at all.
And I think, it's you really, the experts that try to predict things are really have demonstrated how stupid it is to try to do that.
Yeah.
I think what we all need to learn is a lesson in humility. We don't know what's happening next, but that is actually a useful insight, because then we start becoming learners. And the kind of things we did today is to really listen and discuss things and say, well, what do we do with all this change? How can we be more open to different approaches? How can we adapt ourselves and recognize that we're simply not going to know what's going to happen? I think, in theory, the recession should be coming to an end, and then Cyprus comes along, and maybe Italy will not form a government. Yeah. And, so I think what we need to do is to be prepared for constant change and be able to adapt our plans, our strategies, and move along with the disruption. I think we should recognize, adapt to, and embrace the constant disruption that we're going to face.
Well, one of the points that was made this morning is that if you look at the Harvard Business Review and you look at the types of articles that are being written, thousands written on marketing, thousands written on leadership, very few written on communication. So where's the thought leadership going to come from?
Well, I think this was something we just talked about in the previous session. Communication is everywhere. I mean, everything we do when we do business involves some degree of communication, whether it's through an email, through a conversation, etc. So everyone in the organization is a communicator. So I think when we try to separate it as a separate function of the organization, I think especially with the internet, it becomes more difficult. So I think communication is more important than ever, but it probably isn't a specialist field that's outside and sits in a separate box. It's actually a skill that everyone needs to get better at every day. And unfortunately, it's a changing field. So it's not just that you have to get better at it, it's that you have to keep learning new skills.
Yeah. So do you think that things will go back to normal, or are we talking about, when the money starts to come back in again, when the activity starts to happen, we're actually looking at, a very different landscape?
Again, you heard what I said about predictions.
Yeah, okay.
But
thought I'd force you.
Let's just, make a hypothesis, because I think we need to make hypotheses. We need to think, okay, what's my current, reality looking like? So I think we're going to continue with this constant change, because there's a lot of change that still has to come through the system. The recession has actually changed people's mindset about how to spend money, how to analyze the impact, and how the web, how social media, how all these new technologies play a role. But organizations have not changed structure yet. So I think we still have at least a decade where everyone has to readapt their structure, has to kind of form new environments, use new tools. So that is anyway going to create this constant disruption. We have new tools coming on the market all the time. So I think it's better to think of normality as constant change and disruption and just getting good at it than to try and think we're going to go back to something, because that something doesn't exist.
But what we used to make our money out of was fairly polished internal messaging, top-down stuff. Is that still going to exist, or will that disappear?
No, I think the polishing really has to go to different places. I think what we're looking at is there is still, there is skill, there is an understanding of the world, which is all about, I think communicators have to understand what the changes are, how they can move with the changes, and how they can get their company to move with those changes. So I think there is, doing the best job you can in a changing situation. disruption isn't an excuse for incompetence. It's not an excuse to say, oh, because we're going on the web, we can make mistakes all the time. You have to make more mistakes, but you have to learn from them. So I think there is a great deal of competence, but a lot more agility. We have to be much faster, much more responsive, and it's a massive challenge. So I think it's clearly not the 30-second advert, the brochure that you spend 6 months doing. I mean, certain things have to stop. The annual report, the newsletter printed 100,000 times on glossy paper. Those things have to stop.
The annual staff engagement survey.
Absolutely. I mean, there are things that really have to go down the bin.
Yeah.
But we need a lot of different ways of channeling the communication, and those require new skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, Phil, you took this on. It's every 2 years, and it's run entirely by volunteers.
Yes.
So what made you take it on in the first place, and how do you feel about it now?
Well, I came to the conference 2 years ago, which you were very much involved with.
That's right.
In Turin.
Torino, yes. I know what it feels like.
Yes, and
I've been there.
You made it look easy, so I was deceived. And then I woke up and thought, oh my God. It actually was a massive challenge, and I wanted to bring my own experience of events from TEDx Brussels to Eurocom and to the things I've seen in IBC, and I tried to remix it in a different way. So it's been incredibly exhausting. It's been inspirational, and what I most liked about it is the connections between things that didn't look connected. I mean, I think we heard people, talking about freedom fighting, talking about women's issues, talking about spies. I mean, we had all these different stories, and actually, I was wondering when we had the panel discussions, will this connect? And it did. And I really think there was serendipity that actually brought a lot of this together, and it worked. I really think it did.
Okay, fine. Well, the next one will be in 2 years' time. We don't know where it's going to be, so it might be one of you out there that will be taking on the mantle that Phil's been taking on. Now, we had a question. The question is, the best disruptive and free tool in a communicator's toolbox is asking the question, why? Asking the question. Do you think we ask the question, why, enough?
No, we don't. And I think, actually, something I tell my kids literally every time I drop them at school is, please ask questions. Ask questions to your teacher when you don't understand something. Ask questions when you understand something. And when you're in a professional environment, be the one who says at the table, I don't understand what you just said. Can you re-explain to me? I know it's difficult, and it's really, we have a culture of, we shouldn't be the ones who don't know.
Exactly.
But I really think we need that discipline of learning to embrace being idiots and being humble because we don't understand what's going on out there. And we can only do that by asking why.
Excellent, fine. Well, look, can I ask you to give way now to Michael Ambion? Now, Michael is the past president of the region, and the region we're talking about is Middle East, North Africa.
Yep.
And Middle East and Africa. And it was only IMI in my day, so it's much more complex now. Michael, tell us a little bit more about IABC for our viewers who don't know the association and why they should get involved.
Well, it's basically all happening here. We are in Brussels this year, the hub of Europe. We're building on past successes. Most recently, of course, Torino, and before that, Lugano, and then further back, Paris and elsewhere. And what I really want to recognise, first of all, is Phil's practice of walking the talk. He came up to you and myself in Torino and basically said, there's a few tweaks here I would suggest. There's a few things we could do differently. And we looked at him and said, fine, you do it then. And he has. And I'm incredibly impressed. It's been very smooth running. It's been an amazing and inspiring experience to be here. And indeed, there's been such a good group of people here. And that really brings back what is IBC all about. It's about bringing professionals together who are either practicing communications or have a very strong interest in communications, because as Phil says, it's not a profession that's just locked down to one particular type of person who's out there doing it every day, right? It's something that touches upon all of us. The ability to engage with our stakeholders is ability about basically getting our message across. And as we've heard at the conference as well, it's not just about broadcasting, right? It's actually making sure that you're getting through and actually getting a connection. So how can you get involved with IBC? Well, first of all, if you're here, come and talk to us. We're basically looking at the next event in 2 years' time. So we're looking for what European or perhaps Middle Eastern or North African city should host that. But there's a couple of other things. If you are an experienced communicator, you might want to take part in gold quill judging, for example. We're doing that next weekend in London. We signed up fully for that, but next year there will definitely be an opportunity for that. And if you've submitted your gold quill entry, then thank you for that. And then the other key thing I want to mention is that we've got a vibrant and active community on LinkedIn. So basically search for IBC on LinkedIn, look that up. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I'm particularly looking forward to World Conference. I think actually Phil will be speaking there. That's right. And if you haven't already, I don't think we have a copy of his book here, but in chat show style, he has a book out and you can find it on Amazon. And if you have the time, do hit that review bit, because he's looking for feedback too. So, 1 to 5 stars. I think he preferred the latter, but nevertheless, get on to Amazon and basically add your comments there. And if I want to just add one last thing, which is a takeaway, which is a lot of what's come up in the conference has been around basically focus and so on. And one fantastic session was run by Esri Karlebach, who basically did something called IBC Rapido. It's like a super fast version of Pecha. And he forced us all to write something in 62 words. And so I would suggest to help you focus your mind as you're reviewing Phil's new book, get it down to 62 words and get it onto Amazon today. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Michael Ambuel, Phil Weiss, President and past President of IABC. And thank you so much for organising today. It's been fantastic. We're organising the past 3 days.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, great. Well, now we're going to got time to look at your questions. So it's right. We've got quite a few for Rav. So, Rav, what tips do you have for getting remote and or older workers to use Yammer? Okay. What tips do you have for getting remote and older? Because obviously Yammer is an internal network, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay,
let's move over here. So, thank you. So the question was about tips for remote and older workers. I'd like to deal with the older workers question first, because I think it's a little bit of a misnomer that social media, whether that be internal or external, is the exclusive playground of the under 20s. So certainly from my experience, we see people of all ranges using internal social tools. And I think the tip to get people engaged is to educate them on what's in it for them, so that they actually understand, how is this tool going to help me do my job every day? Whether that person's remote or over 50 or 25 years old, people really need to understand what the benefit of it is to them before they'll really engage in using it.
Okay, and next question, how can you get leadership to engage and use Yammer, particularly when they're so nervous of using social media?
Well, nervousness is a perfectly natural reaction. One of the great things about Yammer is obviously it's internal to your company, so it's a very, very good proving ground for using external social media, because you can try it in the safe environment of your own organisation. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing with senior leadership is to frame the value of a tool like Yammer in business terms. So don't talk to them about the technology. Hey, I've got this amazing new social media type tool. Talk to them about what the business is trying to achieve, what are their strategic objectives, and how this could align to those strategic objectives, whether that be to cut cost or to expand or to move into new markets. And that's something that the customer engagement team at Yammer, the team that I belong to, that's what we focus on. We work with organisations to help them tie their strategic business uses to the use of Yammer.
And we have one more question for you, Rav. How do you launch a social media platform like Yammer in an organization?
Well, we talked earlier, Sylvia, about cloud and viral models and freemium and that kind of thing. And although Yammer is an amazingly easy technology to get to grips with, you still have to think about it in a structured way before you launch it. So there's sort of 3 major areas that we always recommend that you focus on. One is around just the technology. So this is a very small, lightweight technology project. But you want to remove barriers from engagement from users. So make it easy for them to sign up. If you have a single sign-on, integrate it. Integrate it with your corporate directory so everyone automatically gets an account. Integrate it with other business applications. And then work out and make sure the users know where to go for help. Right. Do they call the help desk? Do they go to Yammer? Do they post it somewhere? The other area is really critical, is around planning for the change management and training required. So although tools like Yammer are very easy to use and we designed them that way, people still need a little bit of help. So you want to understand, what training, what communications need to go out there. And I always say the communication should focus on a couple of key messages. What is this tool for? What is Yammer not for? How is it going to help me do my job? And where do I go for help? So concentrating on that, and also making sure you have good active community management in place. This is vital for the success of launching any network, is to have people who are a visible presence on the network to help guide other people and provide them advice. Otherwise, it can be very overwhelming and they can feel lost when they join. And I think the other really important area to focus on is business users. So think about not just what your overall strategic objective is as a company and how, or an organization, and how Yammer could support that. Think of individual business areas or business units or even projects that would benefit from having being done on Yammer or having Yammer as part of their processes, and launch the network with 2 or 3 key ones in mind. So a really good example would be something like corporate communications. Actually transition your corporate communications over to Yammer because you're going to reach the widest amount of people in the company. So hopefully that gives you some ideas and some just very high-level tips on how to go on this journey of launching a network. And of course, we have a whole army of people who can help you, so it's always good to remember that as well.
Thank you, Ralph.